welcome back, Exes and Two podcast fans. It's Dani here, and I'm so happy to have all of you back. And I have to say, again, thank you so much. I have so many people who reach out and want to share stories or just tell me about their experiences. And I'm really grateful that you guys trust this platform to be able to speak. And that really means a lot to me. And I hope it means a lot to you guys. I know that every time I get to share with one of my guests that somebody was impacted by their episode, they get so happy. So I just know that this entire community is really, really grateful for every single voice that is heard here. So today I'm really excited because we have another guest. And this person I'm really excited to be able to introduce to you guys because just like every worldwide story that we hear, they're all meaningful and every single one is different. And I think that there's so much value. Plus, this girl's got some tea. So I want to say real quick, as a quick disclaimer, since we are talking about these large entities, my beef is actually with both Amway and Worldwide. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm sorry, but Amway co-signed some shit. I've always tried to say, oh, yeah, they're just a distribution company. No, the more I hear, the more I'm like, nah, you guys are two negative entities. So, but I'm not here to defame you guys. You know, if you guys are out here and you're listening and you're considering joining Amway, Worldwide, or any of their lines of affiliation, like, I'm not going to tell you not to. You're an adult. You can make your own decisions. My thing is I don't like it when people are manipulated into doing something because the level of manipulation that happens in this business, it's sad. So again, I'm not here to defame anybody. I here on this podcast do decide to change names purely because I'm not out here to try to ruin anybody's lives. But if there's another podcast that does say names like, hey, that's them, that's not me, unless it's me on that podcast, which shout out, by the time that this comes out, you guys may have heard that. So sorry about that. Anyways, no, I wanted to be very clear that my intentions are not to defame. My intentions are to share stories because I think it's very important. And in this organization, you're pretty much told you can't share stories until you've been brainwashed enough to say what they want you to say. So with that being said, you guys, I have an awesome guest. Her name is Nandi, and I'm so excited for her to be able to share her story today. So welcome, Nandi. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Dani. I'm so excited. I love what you're doing. Keep at it. And yeah, just to co-sign what you shared, it's great to have this platform for escapees and survivors of Worldwide, because once you leave, like, you're silenced, like you don't get a chance to tell your story, and they can make up whatever lies they want about you on stage, or they can like whisper things to their cross-line and downline about why you left, and you don't really get a chance to share your truth. So this is amazing that this exists, and appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I can't even tell you how many times I heard my upline say, oh, they're just quitters.
Mm-hmm.
And in all reality, we're not quitters. Like, we joined this organization because we're not quitters, because we had a want to do better in life and to help other people. Like, we came in with selfless intentions, and we really, I mean, maybe not quickly, because I learned after 3 years that that's not their intentions, in my humble opinion. Because again, speaking on personal experiences and personal opinions here, but that's not how I saw it. And it sounds like that is not how you saw it either.
No, I had such an eye-opening experience in the last few months, just a very rude awakening about the people who I believed were my best friends for life and who I could really trust, who I thought were safe people, and saw them for who they were. I went through some of the most painful, hardest emotional time of my life this spring and summer, and I have not heard from anyone above my personal sponsors or like our direct upline since the end of March, I want to say. So yeah, I went through that alone without their support. And yeah, I definitely came into this with the best of intentions, truly believing that this would be the opportunity I could use to change my family's lineage, our history, our legacy. Like, I'd really be like taking care of my mom. Like, we'd have money for everything we needed to do. No one would have to worry if they got sick. Like, I could pay off my siblings and I's college debt and take care of our communities, like build things that people need. Like, so many dreams that I have that take a lot of financial backing. Like, I believe that I'd be able to achieve it with this. And sure, maybe that's possible, but I haven't seen it yet. There's a lot of dreams being thrown around, but even the people that get to those certain levels in the business where you're allegedly supposed to be able to do that, I don't really see them doing the things that they said they wanted to do on the way up there.
Not at all. Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's a really good point. I think that they tried to say that they were very philanthropic, but in all reality, I never saw it. Like you can say that shit on stage, but can you prove it? And you shouldn't
Mhm.
have to prove it. Like I get that. But at the same time, with how much shady shit is happening and how many, in my opinion, things that I've heard are lies, again, in my opinion, like I just don't buy it. So I'm right there with you. I totally believe you. And yeah, I mean, we're kind of told like this organization is the greatest thing in the world and you get really pompous about it and there's nothing else that's better for a while and then eventually you start to see like you said it for what it really is and it makes me sad, but I have to ask, how did you find this podcast?
I found the podcast through the X Worldwide group, Amway Resources. I'm probably butchering that title, but it's a Facebook group that had, I know Zay and Melody, their YouTube video channels were like posted a lot in there before, and just a lot of people that have been in this community, survivors, escapees, post and share their stories about the truth that they find out, the very dark truth about Worldwide.
Yeah, I love that group. I am so grateful that Zay and Melody pioneered that group. But yeah, no, this Facebook group was an incredible resource for people who are ex Amway. Unfortunately, we do have some trolls who pop in and out who are like trying to argue us and shit. And I'm like, y'all need to get out of here. Like, you're not welcome here. If you want to be brainwashed, why spend your time arguing with us? Go build your business. Go build your fucking
Right.
downline. Like, mind your damn business. You know,
Right.
if you want to
Pathetic.
be quote haters, like let us live our damn lives. Like
Right.
it's
Why are you entertaining the haters that we allegedly are?
yeah, that's man, that's frustrating. So what is it that compels you to want to share your story and why do you feel it's so important?
Because that entity is gross, and having been someone who, I'm almost afraid to use the word victim because I was gaslit so much about being a victim and having a victim mentality and believing that the world was out to get me and stop being a victim. Like it's like triggering for me. But truly, I was a victim of these people, and I take accountability for the people that I have helped to hurt and who I've contributed to hurting when they were in my care as my downline. While I believed that I was learning to be a leader and really doing what was best and trying to help people and believing in them and trying to coach them up to the plate and stuff, like I'm now upon self-reflection and reflection of what I've spent my time doing the last 4 years. I know that I've contributed to hurting people, and I apologize to anyone who I've um, not, if I've not directly hurt them, then I stood by and let someone else or like co-sign someone else hurting them, whether financially, mentally, emotionally, self-image. But yeah, part of like me wanting to do this is to kind of right some of the wrong and hopefully end the cycle of hurt that Worldwide continues to perpetrate. And one day I hope it comes to an end. But if I can add my story to the stories that are out there and at least stop the beast from growing, might not be able to get people out of there, but we can at least stop it from growing.
Yeah, no, you have such a good point. And I do think that it's great that a lot of, and you're not the only one. I have definitely been very vulnerable on here and said, I had a downline too. And I definitely made a girl cry in a Sherry's once because I didn't want her in my process anymore. And my upline took for fucking ever to do it, but finally let me. And looking back, like, sure, we may not have been compatible as far as friendships go, but I think the fact that we led this couple on for so long and she cried and I feel really guilty for that. Like that was never okay. And a lot of people, everybody who's come on here has definitely been, you know, we've all been guilty of it. So I think it's great that you can kind of be vulnerable, but also like you said, be able to explain yourself because maybe it's not an excuse, but it's a reason. Like we were all manipulated to be this way. Like, and if we weren't, we were also facing ridicule. And some of that ridicule gets worse the higher you get up in your pin levels and depending on how close you are to your upper pin levels, like your platinums or even your emeralds, like
Mhm.
people who are platinums and above are ruthless as fuck. And I happen to know your line of sponsorship, at least from we share an emerald. Your launch sponsorship is fucking ruthless because I know this particular emerald, and
Yep.
him and his wife, they have been emeralds for I guess a hot minute now. They are direct upline to the club owner. That's
Mhm.
where we kind of split off as far as Amway cousins go. But he's bald. He had this great freedom party where he wore a fucking cape, but from what I hear, he is no longer unemployable. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on right now, but it definitely came to light that he had picked up a job within the last year, allegedly to have an opportunity to network, because working at a job is a great place to meet people to put into your business because you can just do that out in public or joining a social club or anything like that. So that was the claim that he went back to work to network. Whether that's true or not, don't know. Don't know if he's still working or if he's had a second retirement, but
Second retirement. Like, I wonder if they would do that. Like, are you going to throw another fucking retirement party, quote retirement? Like, it's
and run
so
around
funny
the
because I
parking lot.
remember. Right, he would talk so highly because I was there when he quote retired. I was at his quote retirement party and shit. Like
Mhm.
looking back at that moment, it was a big deal. Everyone was like, "Oh, he finally got quote free." But in all reality, how free was he? And if they had this unlimited cash flow, why couldn't he just leave the house every day and go, like you said, to different groups in your community? I know they go to church, like
Mhm.
go but their whole church is probably in worldwide at this point, or has already been prospected. So they've probably exhausted all their other avenues. That's funny. But yeah, so that is where we share kind of our upline. So from this particular emerald and above, we share a line of sponsorship. But beyond that, you have, and again, we've changed all of their names. So you had is he a Ruby, the Larry guy?
Yeah, he's a Ruby as far as I know, because I haven't been, in the circle since March. But yeah, Ruby kind of cheated his way into Emerald Qual a couple years ago by exploiting our pockets and then fell right back out because obviously that's not sustainable. But he wanted so desperately to speak at digital virtual family reunion that year. It was just pitiful. Um,
Yeah. Ugh.
so yeah, there's Larry, the Ruby. Then there's a couple in between him and my upline Sapphires, but I won't bring them into it because I don't have any issues with them. Um,
Okay.
so the Sapphires are Bernard and Sharon, and I absolutely have issues with Sharon because I mean, Sharon, you know who you are. If you ever hear this, you are a snake pretending to be a friend, and I will never respect you. Even if you one day leave, which I doubt you will, because you completely drunk the Kool-Aid for so long. But you are misogynistic, you're fake, you're hurtful, and you should not be in a leadership position because when people come to you for help and they come to you with their vulnerabilities and they come to you for support with mental health issues and you yell at them and cause other problems in their life, like you need to sit down and shut up and take notes on what actual leadership is. I'm not a violent person, but I would have to do some deep breathing to not punch you in your face on sight. Okay, now that that's out.
Yeah, and then there's your guys' direct sponsors,
Yep.
Adam and Amanda.
Yes, Adam and Amanda. Um, I don't have hatred for them. I'm just sad and disappointed because after this very painful season where I'm not going to diagnose him as narcissist, but everything that I've researched on what narcissistic behaviors are, he aligns with. So just gonna say that. But this spring, when my ex discarded me and ended the relationship, and put me through some serious like emotional trauma, I explained to Amanda, who I'd been very close with and loved her husband, her children. I really was looking forward to like traveling the world and just living the dream with them. But I told her how much hurt he'd caused me, the way he treated me, the lies, the outright lies, the gaslighting, um, the emotional and mental like violence and degradation and so much. And she's like, well, yeah, I don't see him acting that way with our team. I'll keep an eye out for it. But I don't, I don't think he's going to treat anyone like that, or treat anyone on our team that way. So yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. So it doesn't matter because it was just me, because, you're allowed to be a monster behind closed doors, but as long as you keep up appearances in public, then you're good to go. Yeah, it's just disappointing and sad for me. I kind of don't know what to do with that relationship right now, but you can't really, in my opinion, you can't be on the fence between an abuser and their victim.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally see where you're coming from too with the sadness, because you wanted to be able to trust them, and like you said, you had this vision that they put into your head that you guys are gonna be best friends for life. You're gonna travel the beaches of the world, they said. And
Mm-hmm.
for them to have such responses during your split when you were explaining like, hey, this is not okay with me, and to kind of co-sign that is just unacceptable. So I'm so sorry that that happened to you, and I hope that one day that they hear this and at the very least plants a seed of doubt, at least a little bit, for worldwide, and how they're really acting. I think the sad part is that we get so indoctrinated into this process that it takes a long time for us to wake up. I was actually just, we were talking about this beforehand, but there's so much that has come out about the Nexium uh kind of like cult is like a large group awareness training. So it's very similar to something like the Landmark Forum or
Mm-hmm.
like Worldwide Dream Builders, like the worldwide side of things. It's purely for growth and self development, all that bullshit. And I'm watching these people and I see myself in them. Like I wouldn't even dare say, "Oh, how did you get wrapped up in that?" because I know exactly what that looks like. And I see the similarities between this now like defunct cult to worldwide, and it took some of them years. Some of them still back this guy up who is in prison. He has been convicted of all his crimes. And there's some people who still have his back.
Yeah.
So
Like Warren.
unfortunately there are, yeah, it's just, it's gross. But
Yeah.
unfortunately that is the case. And I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people in worldwide who are, at this point, veterans. Like we were just talking about my upline, or some of them are going on 7, 8 to 10 years in this business, and none of them are diamond. I know for a fact that my upline who went eagle, they're not even platinums yet. And I still believe that Robert, my personal sponsor, I don't think he's anywhere. He has not reached an eagle ship yet. So how did this all start for you? How did you get wrapped up into worldwide the same way some of the rest of us did?
What's funny is like I think about that moment. That was like literally a life-changing moment. So I was dating, I used that Hinge. So I like had saw my ex's profile and like contemplated swiping left or right for a while. And I think I got bored, put my phone down and walked away and came back, and like his picture popped up again. I was like, all right, fine, right. And that was the moment that changed the path of my life to this. So his profile said entrepreneur and actor, and like in LA, that means nothing. So I was like, let's see, are you actually acting? What does entrepreneur mean? But we went out on a date and we spoke for like 3 hours, like, and then we moved to the next, like we went to a pizza restaurant and then went to the bar next door and like continued the conversation. Like we were just like connecting on so much, our visions, our life goals, our family values, our creative stuff. We both like the same drink, old fashions. We were both left-handed. He was talking about marriage and like the future Mrs. his last name, and how he wanted to spoil his future wife and their children and stuff together. And it was like a dude that was serious for the first time in LA, of the people that I'd been on dates with, that was like ready to like be serious about his future in a relationship and stuff, and not waste time out here in the streets. um, so I was really excited. Like my stomach was fluttering and I had tingles on my arms. I was like, wow. And I felt so special that this guy was interested in me. He was an ex-pro soccer athlete, an actor. He actually did book some things. And yeah, he was British, so the accent, and he was a good dresser, and it was just all like, wow, this is the type of person I've been looking for. And then the love bombing definitely started. So, like within weeks of us dating, he gave me a key to his apartment because I was still living on like the far suburbs. So whenever I would drive like to downtown LA or LA proper or whatever, I like would kind of get stuck because I would avoid rush hour traffic and try to wait it out. He's like, oh, if you ever need to like wait it out, here's a key to my apartment. You can come sit here instead of like driving in traffic or going and sitting somewhere else. I was like, wow, like, okay, thank you. Like, you barely
Yeah.
know me, you trust me. Um, so yeah, it gave me a reason to trust him. And then yeah, he was just super like positive and cute and uplifting. And I felt like I was like head over heels for him within weeks, like our first couple of dates. We ended up having a fight after like date 3 or somewhere along that timeline. The first night I stayed over at his place. Um, I was clearly not ready to move to a certain point in the relationship, but I was going to stay over because it was late and I had lived very far away. But he got upset because I was staying over and wasn't ready to insert.
Wow.
Yeah. So we actually had an argument then, and I was like, I'm gonna go home because I feel uncomfortable now, and I feel resentment, and I'm just gonna go. And he like followed me out to my car, and he was like whisper yelling to me in the street at like 3 in the morning. It was not a good look. So I was like pretty close to ending it, but I think like a week went by and I was like, wow, what happened? Like things were going so well. And I was like talking to friends and stuff. And they're like, maybe, look at it from his perspective. Maybe you were sending mixed signals or you were kind of confusing and just like maybe talk it out. So I ended up
I'm
talking.
so shocked. Can I say something really quick? Because,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. So this kind of, I guess in retrospect, this kind of behavior, because he was already in worldwide at this point, you just had no idea. So
Yeah.
this type of behavior and treatment, it kind of checks out. Like, kind of looking back, does that kind of make sense now, that because they do blur the lines of consent in worldwide, and they're very much pushing this narrative where, because you are woman, he is male, he is allowed to want what he wants, and he has this expectation that this is going to happen. And kind of in retrospect, do you kind of look at that moment now and you're just kind of like, oh shit, like that checks out?
I don't know specifically if it's the worldwide influences. I think it is just a lot to do with him and his attitude and his ego and how he views people. I've thought about that moment a lot, and I'm like, why did I go back? Why, like that? If I had just been like, all right, he treated me that way, we had this argument, we barely even know each other, and just moved on, my life would have been very different. But because I was like, okay, let's talk it out. And I journaled all my thoughts and points. And I'm like, these are my expectations. I'd love to continue having a friendship, but this is what I'm not going to tolerate, blah, blah, blah. And that just set the tone for the rest of our relationship. Like him getting away with a lot of shit and me tolerating it. There's definitely a lot of misogyny in Worldwide Group. We did not read, or I was never taught to read that book that you've mentioned on other episodes before. Thank God, because I think I would have actually thrown up. And that would have been a massive red flag. Yeah, there's still heavy misogyny running rampant through the organization.
Wow. But that is definitely a characteristic of what you said you were reading about narcissism. And like I said, you guys, we don't have a diagnosis, but I think it's okay to say, like, I think it's fair to say that you have an opinion on somebody being a narcissist. And it's okay though, because I think that when we're in these situations, I don't think people, like, from the outside, people can be like, well, why did you stay? Okay, well, let me tell you guys, it's not uncommon. This is very, very common because it's your first argument. You think about
Mhm.
the fact that you already have such a positive view of this person. It's potentially just the first and only time this is going to happen. At least that's the viewpoint behind it. So no, totally makes sense that you were like, no, I'm willing to give this a shot. It was the very first time something had happened. And it's kind of like the analogy of the frog, right? You put it in hot water, it'll jump out. But when you put it in cool water and you slowly turn it up, the thing will boil to death. If somebody punches you in the face on the first date, you are not going to ever go back out with them. But if they groom you through this process of manipulation and love bombing and all of these other like narcissistic abusive tactics, it's not uncommon at all to kind of look back and be like, holy shit, like that was
Mhm.
never okay. But I only say that because I hope that people listening to this who maybe haven't been in these situations before with relationships or in their families or even a friendship, like I just want people to understand that like it's not uncommon. So if you guys have that thought ever about anybody here, you guys need to check yourself right now.
Yeah.
We don't victim blame here.
Agreed. That's not a thing I will not tolerate. And I'm not gonna mention the like other Instagram pages or YouTube channels that like go like there are psychologists and narcissistic, I cannot talk today, narcissistic abuse coaches that help you heal through that. There are several pages that I follow, and I'm happy if someone reaches out to me on Instagram, like I'll share those links to you. But I would say before you voice your opinion on what abuse is and what narcissism is and what people's experiences are, like you research heavily and don't just start talking out the side of your neck.
Yeah. So you guys get over this situation and it sounds like you guys kind of talk it out. You guys stay together.
Mhm.
How long after this particular moment do you start to kind of be suspicious about what he's actually doing for a living or what he claims he's doing for a living? The entrepreneurship part, if you will.
Yeah. So it was always kind of a tension, like a back and forth power battle to get to the bottom of what he does because he was always like working late in the middle of the night. He always had to go home for, like from our dates to hop into a meeting. And I'm like, what meetings are you having at like 2 in the morning? And he's like, I have these meetings and stuff. And I'm like, okay. But he would not explain what it was that he was doing. He would say, because I'd be like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm an entrepreneur. I make money through like e-commerce store, just all the big terms just thrown in at once. And I'm like, okay, but every time he would like dodge the question or like not give me a straight answer of what he was doing, I started to get suspicious because I wasn't suspicious at first. Like after I think on our first or second date, we like took an Uber and he connected with the driver, and I was like really impressed. I was like, wow, he's really changing people's lives and giving them opportunities. Had no idea what that opportunity was, but yeah, it started to get to a point where we were having like full on like hour-long debates, and I'm like, he's like, I can't explain what I do in 5 minutes. Could you explain what you do in 5 minutes? And I'm like, I'm a costume designer. I it, I don't really like if you want me to go through my day to day of what I do from the time I get a script to the point that I'm on set or returning the clothes that I've shopped for. Yeah, that'd probably take more than 5 minutes, but it wouldn't take that long. But as a costume designer, I create the character's looks for a media content piece that I've been hired to style. So yeah, I can't explain it. He's like, well, that's great for you, but I can't explain what I do in under 5 minutes. And it's kind of disrespectful for my industry and my position, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, well, how? I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm fine. I try my best to like keep it together, but I'm dying over here because it's true. These are all like I'm like crying because it's so funny because it's like these are buzzwords that we are taught to use. It's like you are
Mhm.
not prepared for this information. You are not like I couldn't like realistically, what are these people doing? My goal as a worldwide dream builder when I was in worldwide was purely to go out and prospect people. My
Mhm.
entire quote business was me going and recruiting people into my downline. That was my business. That took
Okay.
2 seconds to say. So like
That's it.
all of these different things that he was taught to say, it just it's so sad that
Unnecessary.
that's happening. But you're so right. You're like, it took you what, a couple of minutes to explain what you do. And that was a very good description because I was like, I'm intrigued. I didn't know what costume designers do. I was just like, oh, they do this. But no, that was a great
They were interesting
explanation,
than
which
what
is
I said, but
no,
yeah.
for sure. That's
Um,
crazy.
Yeah, he would not. So we literally would have arguments, and he was like, "I have a store. These brands pay me to buy the stuff for my store." And I'm like, oh, "Okay," because he had like hordes of laundry detergent and excess and vitamins, and he was like, constantly trying to get me to like be into the business with him, which I was like, I totally support the entrepreneurship, and that sounds really cool. And like, if we continue to be together, like probably I'll be in the business with you. But he was like really heavily pushing it. And I was like, if that's how you're going to make your money and I'm required to just like buy thousands of bottles of laundry detergent. That's not going to work because I have other stuff to spend money on and I don't need that sitting around my house. But luckily, I found out that there are way more products available. He just didn't buy them for whatever reason. But yeah, he was being so dodgy with it. And he tried to force me to get into a meeting to hear the like official business plan and stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm just getting to know you. I am deciding if I like you yet. I don't need to if I like you, then we'll probably end up doing business together, but I'm not going to get into business with someone who I'm just now getting to know. But he kept pushing and pushing and pushing it. So eventually my first board plan I saw was one that he showed for one of his downline legs. I was definitely scared like going to that plan because it was like 8 o'clock at night. We're heading towards a sketchy area in LA. And I'm like, let me turn on my location because I might go missing. Like this might be the night that I get trafficked and it'll be my fault because this is stupid. But then there was like guys waiting in suits outside this like apartment unit. And I saw one of the downline's wife come out and she gave me a hug and I was like, okay, I guess I'm safe. So I heard the board plan and what he described was so simple and like just overly simple that I was like, you've been hiding this from me? Like what? I don't get it. Like you shop from your own store and get other people to do the same. What's the problem? Why does this have to be a big secret? And I'd never heard of Amway before, so it didn't like send off any red flags or anything. So I was like, okay, cool. Let's fine. Let's keep going. Eventually saw another board plan by the upline Ruby Larry because he flies into town once a month in LA to show the plan for all of his legs here. And I got to see more of the association, and that's when I met Amanda and Mark, and everyone was just so like excited in the room and happy to see me. And they're like, "We've heard so much about you. Welcome!" and like giving me hugs and stuff, and more of the love bombing. And you're like, "Wow, I'm surrounded by people who are excited about life and are positive and not like snarky and mean and rude. And I can leave my purse on a chair and everybody's like seems like they've been waiting for me to get here." And like you don't have a circle like that necessarily depending on what your life is like. I was pretty solo at the time because I recently moved to LA, didn't have like a full, like all I had was work. That was it. And I was living with my dad at the time, so I would go to Trader Joe's and work and come home and stream movies until I fell asleep to get up and go to work the next day. I had nothing going on and it was kind of depressing. So they found me at a very down time in my life.
Yeah. It's almost like a perfect storm, especially when you're new to the area, you don't have a lot of friends, you are a person who sounds like you seem like you like to get around people. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, all of the things. And these people seem so nice. Like, and then I'm sure it was some like I can't imagine what it would have been like to be like sitting and watching this person who might be your future partner. Because were you guys considered dating at this point, or did he introduce you as like his friend?
As his girlfriend.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he's been dating a couple months.
So your significant other, you're watching your significant other up there, like doing this, what looks very professional. So I can imagine all of that combined just looked really cool. And I can
Mm-hmm.
attest to that, like when you go to a room like that and you're already feeling so negative, that level of positive all at once feels so fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you just only really want to be around that association.
Yeah.
Um, and and you had no idea what Amway even was, which was really cool because for them anyways, because you're like, hey, like this just seems dope. So did you at any point tell your parents that you had seen anything in relation to Amway, and what was their response to that?
I don't think. Okay, it was a very weird clusterfuck of everything happening. So he was really pushing the relationship forward. He had me get on a Zoom and meet his family because they live in London. So it was like maybe a month in. I think we had just said, "Hey, we're exclusive. Let's do this." And he was like, "I want you to meet my family." I was like, "Whoa, that's a lot." Um, but he was insistent, so I met them, and that was cool. And then my family, because I was living with my dad, but my mom, my sister, and brother were coming in to visit. This was like in June, so we met early May, and this was, I think they came like the first or second week of June that year. So it's like, well, I don't know the next time that they'll all be together in the same spot, because it's not like they come over here all the time to visit. So it'd be great. It is kind of soon, but I met your family, so let me introduce you to mine. So we did that all while like he was pushing me to come to a business plan and get registered. But I know that when he met my family, they were asking him about his business, and he was being defensive and avoidant and dodgy as he had with me. But I was like, spitting at this point. So I was like defending him. I'm like, yeah, it's just, that's just the way it is. It's just confidential and blah, just being a supportive girlfriend. Meanwhile, my parents are like, this doesn't make any sense. But funny enough, once I figured everything out and realized what it was that I was doing and got registered, my dad was really interested in the business. So they didn't really have anything negative to say. They just wanted to get to the bottom of what he was doing. My dad ended up becoming my first downline. He lasted, I think, like
Oh,
3
wow.
and
3 weeks.
uncoachable as hell.
Oh, no.
He didn't want to wear the business attire. He wanted to be comfortable. He didn't want to listen to the Kates and the audios. I think he had trouble with some of the tech, and it was like the apps were like confusing him and stuff. And he didn't agree with a lot of the rhetoric and the attempts to brainwash, and it didn't work out. And he ended up, he didn't want us contacting people on his phone with their phone numbers, rightfully so, because that was a constant thing that we faced when we were taking people through the process. And they were like, so how are we, like, how I build my business? And we're like, oh, so give us your 300 phone numbers. And they're like, no, not doing that. And they kind of wouldn't move forward. So yeah, my dad didn't want to have us call people, because people were asking him, why are these people calling me? And he ended up leaving a couple weeks later. Like, he and Luke got into a big argument after a training session once, and he was like just going back and forth talking about how it's just not going to work and stuff. And of course, I was so into it by that point that I was fully aware of at that point. And my mom has a lot to say now. But yeah, there wasn't much negativity expressed back then. They're just like, all right, well, if you do it, then, good luck and stuff. And my mom's been a customer, and my siblings have occasionally bought stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Your dad was your downline.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got into an argument. And kind of in retrospect now, you're probably like you said, yeah, I don't, calling that many people. I was never asked that question, but if I was, I definitely would have been hesitant and been like, nah, like these people, you're not going to call these people out of the blue just to try to sell them a product or try to recruit them into something. Like, that's weird. Cold calling is, I've done cold calling too in sales. Sales was my position that I was in for a long time. I hated cold calling, but it's different when you're cold calling a business when you have an actual product to sell.
Right.
It still sucks. But when you're cold calling people, just regular, ordinary people who are not showing intentions of any sort of interest in something, it's very invasive. And
Yeah.
I could totally see where you're coming from. And you're like, I wouldn't want to do that. So, wow. So at least I'm glad that they at least like were continuing to maybe support you from a distance, and then it didn't did it end up causing too much of a rift between you guys, or you guys kept a pretty good relationship the whole time?
Me and my dad.
Yeah, you and your family, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't affect, I thought it might, but it didn't affect him. I think he would frequently check in and be like, how's it going? Have you guys leveled up and stuff? And I'd always only give the positives. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to a conference. Oh, we walked across the stage. Oh yeah, we just launched a new downline. But like, meanwhile, making like $100 a month. He's still been in my life, and I'm thankful to have my family still care about me and support me, now that my husband has dropped me on the side of the road and my business partners have completely discarded me too.
Which is when you say it like that, like it's so real, like it's so raw, and it's the reality. And I cannot speak to how sorry I am that you went through that, because it's like, I mean, it's hard enough that you go through like I don't even call it a breakup, because that just sounds like too simple of a term with your significant
Right.
other. Like, you're quite literally going through the process of splitting with who you chose to do life with. Like, that is so hurtful, but it's almost like a breakup when you're breaking up with your upline,
Yeah.
because when you're there, those are your best friends. Those are the
Yes.
people who say, we are going to do life with. We are like in your corner. borrow our belief, we'll always be there for you, all this love bombing bullshit. But when it really comes down to those real hard moments, they are not fucking
No.
there. And it's devastating to look at that relationship and see how it was very fake, which
Yeah.
makes me sad. But I did that too. I was a fake friend to some of my downline
Mhm.
too. Yeah. But so you're going through this business. You're now launched. Did you guys, how long did it take you guys, how long were you guys dating when you guys decided to get married? And was that ever pushed on you guys from your upline?
So we moved in together 6 months into dating, because my dad sold his sister sold the house that was my grandfather's house, and my dad wasn't being super specific about where we were going to live. So I was like, okay, I'm going to move back to a city where I can afford to live, and that was probably Chicago or some East Coast city where I'm close to relatives and friends and stuff. And I was like telling Luke, like, I can't afford to stay here, so I'm probably going to move. And long distance doesn't seem like something either of us want to do. So he was like, move in with me. He's like, come live with me. I'm like, that's really soon, and that could put a lot of stress on the relationship. And he's like, it could be worth it. Either this works out, and this is just our timeline, or it doesn't, and we learned something. And I was like, all right. So I moved in with him. That was 6 months in, and then we decided to get married. I think we moved in right before FED. That was my first major function. I'll come back to that story. Um, we got married March of the following year, right before spring leadership, because we initially the conversation started as like kind of a joke, like, hey, I want to sit together at the function next year, because he was an Eagle and I wasn't. I was his downline, so I couldn't sit with him, and spending a whole weekend with like apart was kind of like, that's not fun. So it was kind of like a joke, like, hey, let's get engaged so we can sit together at spring leadership. And I was like, then it kind of became real. And then like once we agreed that we wanted to get married, like soon, I kind of expected him to propose, but he never did. Another example of me setting the tone for what I would tolerate in a relationship, allowing my value to not be respected, because I never should have married someone who didn't propose to me. But my bad, lessons learned. So yeah, we got married 10 months into knowing each other.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Which you hear stories though, some people like they get married pretty quick and then there they
Mm-hmm.
are 10 years later still married. So it's like,
Yeah, happy
who's
as
to know
hell.
what's a good time?
Yeah. And that's the thing I kept like hearing and telling myself, like, everyone's timeline is different. If it's meant to be, it doesn't matter. Like, and it seemed like that was a logical, like, great choice to make at the time. But yeah, here we are.
Wow. Was that ever pushed on you guys from your upline to get married?
No, not really. I mean, it was kind of like expected, because like it would have been weird for us not to be married. Like, as you were doing life together, we're building the business together. Every time he would speak at a board plan, he would talk about me and like make it sound so romantic, like he was my knight in shining armor and all the ways he wanted to save me and like spoil me and stuff. So it was super, like, people were just like, oh, like watching him talk about me, and I was sitting in the audience like, oh my god. And people would come up to me after the board plans and be like, the way he spoke about you, oh my god, oh, you guys are going to make such beautiful babies. And I'm just like, okay. But yeah, it was like, that was the obvious thing that was going to happen, was us getting married. I wouldn't say that we necessarily had pressure to do it, certainly not that fast.
Okay, well that's good actually. I'm really happy to hear that. Usually you kind of hear like it's urged from your upline to get into that position, but that actually makes me really happy that you were able to make that decision for yourself, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
So you guys get married. What is your first like year of marriage is and did you have a honeymoon phase with the business after you guys got married?
It was hell. That was so basically, the week we got married was the week that COVID started and everything was shut down. So our first year of marriage was pandemic. The business was going through all of its challenges, hurdles with being virtual and Zoom fatigue, and it was interesting. But I mean, I knew more of like COVID doing the business than I did any other way of doing the business. Like, that was the majority of my time in the business was COVID. So
Wow.
yeah.
So you get
Uh,
married and then you're kind of locked in the house with somebody for almost a whole year.
Yeah, so I was still working retail. I was an essential worker. So I never even got the whole, like, I never got to rest at home. I was being
Oh,
exposed
okay.
to rude, entitled people all day, every day, and exhausted, risking my health to be there, and then come home and talk, just try to unpack from my day. And my husband sitting there like, well, maybe the way these interactions, you're attracting them because, you just put that negativity out there. So this type of stuff is the stuff that you're drawing in. There was one day that I came home and I was like, my foot hurt because this like 400-pound man he stepped backwards onto me and he didn't realize I was behind him. So he stepped onto my foot at work and it hurt, freaking hurt. And I was telling my husband when I got home that night, and he used it against me in an argument later, like, yeah, I mean, this is the type of stuff that you just maybe attract because you're just negative. And I'm like, great. Thanks for that. Well, you've been at home most of the day. You get to take naps. You get to work out, go to the gym twice a day. You get to go prospect, even though we're supposed to be at home, staying out of people's faces, but you're still going out to grab numbers. Yeah, I was very uncomfortable with like the training to still be out there trying to connect with people when we didn't know if literally that conversation could kill you or a family member. I was so frustrated that he didn't care about his or my safety enough to like be like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, from what I understand, is that Worldwide's take on COVID was very controversial, that they took a very anti-vaccine take, a very anti-mask take. And is that the case for you guys as well?
Very anti, like they felt they knew better than the doctors and the CDC. It was like, well, you can still take your walks, you can still get out and connect, you can still smile. And it's like, dude, like they're like, smile with your eyes if you're wearing a mask. I'm like, keep your distance. You shouldn't be trying to handshake or anything. They say 6 feet apart for a reason. So yeah, it was, still very selfish agenda. We had the virtual functions for a while, and then we finally came back to our first in-person function, and they were like, you have to be masked up because of the rules of the arena. And I was like, okay, because I don't feel safe being around 20,000 people in the middle of COVID, even with the mask on, but it's required. So you can't just sit at home. Yeah, he didn't care. He was like, we're going. And I was like, so you'll leave me here to watch the virtual function and possibly get me sick when you come back. So I was like, whatever, I'll just go. So we get there, and guess how many people were not wearing masks, and it was not enforced.
Crazy.
Club owner, his wife was walking around with one of those stupid little plastic face shields that like sits like 6 inches in front of your mouth, and like meanwhile your breath goes everywhere to the side.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is that? Like, there's so many people not wearing masks. I was like furious. I was so mad because there are people with serious health issues or living with people with serious health issues, and you're trusting here. Like the only reason you might be okay with coming is because it's mandatory to have a mask, and you get there and it's not being abided by. So they had a blatant disrespect and disregard of the seriousness of the pandemic.
That's sad. I know that when we had Hope on, she's in the Canadian market, and she was pregnant when all this was taking place, and they were trying to encourage her to go to these meetings. And her husband at the time was still kind of involved, and she was like, no, I'm not going. Like I'm pregnant. Like this is not okay. They said that COVID was the reason why they quit, that they kind of just started really seeing things for what they were. The fact that they had that encouragement to still go to these, I heard allegedly, I know she said that they were still having meetings in their area, even though they were told not to. I've heard that was the same in the US. Did you kind of see that, where they're having these like secret meetings and going against the CDC and the shutdowns?
I don't know that in our area specifically, if that was happening, I wasn't going to them. Everything was so Zoom heavy. But I know before, like it was a mandatory shutdown, we still squeezed in one. I don't think it was a regional. I think it was just a second look meeting. But it was very low attended because people had already started getting scared. There was a short period where I didn't believe what was going to happen. I had a coworker who was fear mongering. He's like, they're going to shut down the food and the supply trucks, and they're going to shut down the airlines. I was like, okay, like the US economy is not going to just shut down a week later. Here we are. But yeah, for that like week, I didn't believe. I thought it was just, overhyped, like our LA's hurricane last or 2 weeks ago. They're like,
oh yeah, I heard about that.
There was a drizzle. I mean, maybe it got hit worse in other areas of the city, but my apartment was like a drizzle. So I figured it was one of those situations. And then the pandemic actually happened. And then obviously we shut down, but there was like in that week, there was still a function, and it was not packed like it normally is.
Yeah. Wow. And So, and I always say this because I have a diverse group of people who are listening, but if you as a one individual and you are one single individual, if not to wear a mask and consider that your freedom of choice, like whatever. But when you're preaching that to an entire organization of a very diverse group of people, where, I mean, you don't know who, like you said, you don't know who has what family members at home. It's not okay to do that. I don't ever see that as okay. I'm going to ignore you, but I am going to take focus on these people who have this really big influence, and they're just continuing to influence people to make that same decision. And of course, quote, duplication, you've got an entire group of people who are now out there. And at this time, we don't know how it's impacting people. I
No,
mean, for
it was so
it was
unknown.
like it was so scary. And I know for me, my dad had a stroke that year. So it was like we had to be careful. Like I didn't see my family for months, a couple of
Yeah.
months. We had to be very careful. And we now know that with the vaccine, like we're all good. I see my dad regularly now. But back then, that was a dangerous thing to be pushing. And it's like
Yeah.
they do that though for so many different things, which is, again, very dangerous. I had, the daughter of my upline, she married a cross line. One of the first things I heard from her was that this business helped her get off antidepressants. And I was like, how are you going to actually say that to people that you don't know?
The cross line, the only thing they use that as the reason to not cross line, but the reason that they don't want us cross lining is because they don't want us to exchange numbers and start validating each other's traumatic experiences. Like they just don't want us to talk. It's like the same
Yeah.
concept of employers not wanting employees to talk about their wages because they know that they can take advantage of people if there isn't unity amongst like the knowledge.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, could you imagine if somebody in your cross line was like, hey, so this is what's actually going on behind closed doors? I think I definitely would have questioned some things because I wasn't allowed to know anything. The communication is up. That's it. There is no communication down. It's only
Mm-hmm.
up. So we don't know what the fuck is going on
A
in
lot
our
of
upline's
BS.
lives. Yeah. So you guys somehow survived COVID. I don't say that in a healthy way. I just mean like Worldwide Dream Builder somehow survived COVID. I was hoping that
Mm-hmm.
it would take it down, but you guys make it through COVID. What was that like the end of COVID like for you guys, and when things started to open back up? Did that help at all in your relationship? Right? I know you said it was a nightmare.
No, it just kept getting worse. Like we never had the honeymoon period in our relationship. Forget the business. We didn't have that. It just was getting worse and worse. And like I was just trying to figure out how to make it work because I'm like, this isn't what people are supposed to go through in our upline because we'd have so many counsel sessions with them. They're like, well, look, if you're going through the hard stuff now, then it's going to be smooth sailing for you for, the rest of your marriage. Because other people, it's all like honeymoon for the first couple of years and they don't know how to deal with the hard stuff when it comes down the road. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it just kept getting worse. The gaslighting, like he's an A1 slob. Like I got so frustrated with like the filth of our living situation and like trying to clean up, and then my efforts would make a dent into it because he'd come right behind me and undo the cleaning that I did. We had to have multiple council sessions, not talk sessions on just the splitting up of the chores, like children, roommates. Like we had to have other adults be like, okay, you X, you do this and once a week, and Nandi, you do this once a week. And I was like, this feels so immature and childish. And like, of course, I make a mess because I exist and I live in my home, but it's like I can't take it piling up for so long. And it's so much easier to maintain cleanliness when like that's the standard versus like letting things just get crazy and then trying to like clean it all back up at once. But he took the I wonder if you heard this when you were in the business. They would like promote this. I don't care if you have dirty dishes in the sink or your house is a mess. If you're building the business and you're out there grabbing numbers, then I don't care about some dishes in the sink. He took
Yep.
that to heart.
They really did. Your house will be clean when you're free. And then you
Yeah.
can afford to pay somebody to do it. And like
Yep.
that's not reality.
That's
But like,
disgusting. My ex being a dirty person and then using the business to justify not cleaning up after himself, which was just like infuriating. Like, yeah, they mean like if one night you have a board plan and it's your choice between getting to the board plan on time and doing the dishes, that's what they're talking about. They're not
yeah.
saying never fucking clean your apartment. um,
Yeah.
but this one thing that really like pissed me off, and I was just so disgusted by it. So Larry was in town showing the plan for us, and he loves to edify your upline, the club owner and his wife.
Ah, the club owner. Hey.
Yeah, he's like obsessed with them. And he was like, yeah, so I was hanging out with the diamonds at, I forgot what function. Maybe it was either they were speaking, or they're in some social circle where platinums and above, or maybe it was after achievers. I don't know. But he was like, yeah, club owner says that like when he comes home, he just throws his jacket, his blazer on the floor, and like it pisses his wife off because she's like, pick it up. And he's like, I have a maid now to do that. And he's like, that he's bragging about this and edifying this in a plan. And I'm just sitting there like looking at my ex like, that's so entitled and nasty. Like, these are the people we're supposed to be introducing people to and wanting to like have that as a lifestyle. Like, I don't want my children to pick up that type of behavior. Like, oh, I can just throw my shit on the ground because there's someone else that I employ to pick up after my nasty self. Like, that is so deplorable to me. I lost so much respect for everybody in that conversation that night, because I was like, what type of values are we teaching here? Like, what?
Oh my gosh. I knew the club owner was not a good dude, but the more I hear about him, like I already had my feelings about him, especially when I go back
Yeah.
and listen to audios. I'm like, fuck, like this is not good.
Yeah.
But see, the more I hear, the more I'm just like, how disgusting are these people? And it makes me feel bad for his wife who
Yeah.
purely has this indoctrination. I think that she is so brainwashed that she has to feel this way. I
Exactly.
would like to believe that they have a healthy relationship. I don't buy it. I'd like to believe that. I don't buy it. I think that he has narcissistic traits, I'm sure, and she probably doesn't have a fucking voice. And
Yep.
she was raised like that. I mean, to some degree, at least from what I understand of her story, she was raised very, very religious. And she got bullied in school, and she was homeschooled for a while. And she met the club owner, and at the time, the club owner owned what I think was called Venue 126 in Portland. It was an underage nightclub, just like some jank ass bullshit place. Like my brother went there a couple of times, but I don't think she ever really had a chance because she was like 18 when she got into the business. And now, like, I just question like her happiness now. And it's kind of like once you go diamond and you have your kids in this business,
Stuck
I
there.
think it's too late. You
Yeah.
can't, you like, she doesn't have, at least I don't know. There's probably a lack of a skill set. Like, if you leave that situation, what are you going to? You have a lush life right now. What
Mm-hmm.
are you leaving for? So you kind of have this trap to stay in. And in some ways, I feel bad. But then in others, I'm like, no, you're still pushing this misogyny onto people. Like, how innocent are you in the situation? But,
You're not his family's friend.
ugh,
Yeah.
that's sad.
And
So,
it's not
quick
just
question.
him, like, that being his character, it's the fact that my upline was edifying this behavior. Like, that was something
Yeah.
to, like, goals. I'm a dirty slob and I have slaves to clean up after me.
Right. That's so okay, question. So kind of speaking on the club owner and kind of a small tangent, you had shed some light on some information for me that I'm really excited to divulge.
Yeah.
You had not seen the club owner and his wife speak while you were still in. So you left a few months ago now, so we don't know what it is right now. But can you
Yeah.
tell me what that was like?
Yeah, so FED last year and spring leadership of this year, they were not speaking. Oh, and family reunion of last year. So at least a year, unless they started speaking again. They weren't speaking. They introduced one of their downline that had like crossed hands at family reunion, but they weren't speaking. They were still sitting behind the like in the diamond den or whatever that is, but they were not on the itinerary.
Wow. Wow. That I like, there's just so many questions in my head that I would love to get answers to. I probably never will. Maybe someday. If you have information on this and you want to out it, even anonymously, come and let me know. But I just have so many questions as to why. Like, did they say something that they weren't supposed to and like got in trouble for it? Did their diamond ship just crumple? Did they fall out of qualification? Like something happened, and then you kind of correlated as well that around the same time she was like the crown wife's like right hand person. They were very like she was trying to be her so heavily. But
Yeah.
then you said around the same time that she dyed her hair, and there might be some correlation between this and how she is her outward appearance.
Yeah, something was just very different because, she had the platinum blonde to match Crown's wife, the lash extensions that Crown's wife also did. I don't know how much they copied each other or one was copying the other or what, but they were definitely like, it was old me and little or young me. Like that's what it looked like. It was creepy. But I couldn't spot her because, you could always like look and try to spot the diamonds in their little alcove. And I could always pick her out because of her hair. And she went like just straight up brunette. And, this was in the middle of them recently stopped speaking on the circuit. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
Wow. That
yeah.
yeah. My old upline, who's no longer in the business, she sent me a picture because she still follows her on Instagram.
Mhm.
And she's like, dude, she looks sick. I was like, bro, like that's so sad. So I always wonder, but there was also something that you had said that they have kind of used in their stories, and someone else told me about it as well, where they were talking about their oldest child and how they're having this major issue because their child is autistic. Can you mind going into
Yeah.
that a little bit?
Yeah, so FED last year, when she or the last time that they spoke on stage, it couldn't have been FED. It must have been spring leadership of last year. She was saying how their son had been showing some behavioral like things, and like they got diagnosed or got the diagnosis that he was autistic, and super like emotional for them, and they were trying to find like care facility or like a school that could accommodate his needs and stuff. And so they found one that was like, we're supposed to be really good, but that was like 2 hours away. So it was like every day to take him there, someone had to be able to take him there to a 2 hour drive and then pick him up and a 2 hour drive back, or stay there with him and come back. And, just how like hard and taxing it had been to like have the child with the like autism and like the special needs, having to deal with that and stuff. So I mean, maybe that has something to do with her health, and if she's tired, that makes sense because she's dealing with that. Maybe she dyed her hair so that she wouldn't have to do as much maintenance as like platinum blonde requires. So there could be validation besides like no longer being diamond. I thought, to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they asked to stop speaking because it's too time consuming and they have all of their focus going to their kid, because they also have another child now. So who knows? There's so much secrecy and not a lot of transparency. So you're always left to guess.
Yeah, yeah. I think the one thing that bothers me is that they acted like this was like the reason that you should be diamond, because if you have a special needs child, and the fact that they use it as a sob story too, that really upset me. I went off about it in an episode that'll come out before this one because I was so mad because I live in their same state and I refuse to believe that they had to have found the most prestigious fucking school and didn't. What did we say? My previous guest Jada, we said maybe she didn't want to catch the poor because there's lots of schools in the area, but
Yeah.
and there's many, like, and a lot of them aren't even income based. Some are, some aren't. And there's a lot of resources that are not income based as long as your child doesn't have resources in their name above a certain amount. It's just frustrating. So y'all know how I feel about that already. I went off. I unloaded on that one because, as a mom with a child with autism, like, I know it's challenging. I could totally see, you're absolutely right, the validation and just kind of letting your hair go. And I definitely did that. I had some blonde in my hair. I'm pointing it out right now, but I just let it go because it's not feasible. My child, he does have a lot that I need to care for him for, but I'm never going to say it's like the worst thing in the world. Like, this is not the worst thing that's ever happened to me. If it is for them, like, I guess great,
Yeah.
but it's a blessing in all honesty. So but no, it's just interesting to hear that they're not speaking. I mean, if it is their child, great. I'm glad that they're able to take that time and spend doing what they need to do.
Right.
But if there's other reasons, I want to know because it's dark. But
Yeah.
kind of going back to your time in the business, when you're starting to notice these red flags, they're starting to build up. What does that start looking like for you?
I think it's just like the constant, like my free time wasn't my own. I felt my thoughts replaced. Like I no longer, like I started to get, it was very scary. This is about when I came to the end of my relationship with them, and I reached out because I was like, I need a break. My mental health is suffering. I was having an identity crisis. I didn't know why I was alive. I didn't know my purpose. I felt disconnected from who I am. I felt like I heard five voices, my upline voices in my head, and I couldn't find my own conscience. I couldn't hear my voice in my head, just making like day-to-day decisions like, what should I wear today? Oh, well, that hemline's too short. Ooh, is this just too low cut. Someone might see me out in public and be like, oh my God, there's Nandi. She's an Eagles wife. She looks like a, like, you know, derogatory word. Or I really would like to try a new skincare product because artistry is not helping my hyperpigmentation, but I don't know, if I get caught walking into Sephora, someone might judge me or be like, look, why aren't you buying your own products? So just constant chatter in my head, and none of the voices were mine. And I just really started to like freak out. So that was at the, like, towards the end, where I'll tell you how this all led to our separation and stuff. Yeah, red flags. I don't know. Paul Sika's book, I read that and found out that he had cheated on Billy Kay. And meanwhile, he's the worldwide pastor, and he tries to spin it and act like, I just learned from this and I became a much better husband after that. But then I actually started doing some more digging on and researching recently about that. And apparently, this wasn't a one-time case where he cheated on his wife with with the young, like, I don't know the exact age because he didn't put it in his book, but a young girl of the daughter of a friend in the church that he was a pastor of. And apparently it was multiple young girls that he was fucking while being married to Billy Kay, which is why he
Oh,
can no longer be a pastor because the church kicked him out, and like the whole church community, they're like, no, you can't. So that's why he is the pastor to MLMs now.
no way.
This is what
Holy
I found. Now,
crap.
all allegedly, of course, but
Yeah, yeah,
that's,
yeah. No, good.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's not surprising though, because you're right, that book is fucked up. That book is very similar to fucking Love and Respect, the way that
Mhm.
they preach that if a man cheats, it's the wife's fault. And if she's withholding intimacy, it's her fault if he cheats. And it's like,
Yep.
bro, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So this book is it sounds like it was an absolute red flag for you, but it sounds like, and I kind of want to go back because you were going to talk about it, was your first major function, and was that just one giant red flag for you looking back?
Oh, it was a shit show. Because I didn't get a proper process. Like I told you about kind of how I was put into this business by my ex. He didn't give me a proper process. So when he was like, all right, first major function, he had talked about it as if it was a conference, a business conference. I was so excited to go on my first trip with a partner and go to a business conference. And I'm thinking like it's a convention. Like we're going to go, there's going to be multiple speakers at different times. You can pick and choose who you want to listen to. There'll be booths, you can network. Like that's what I'm thinking. And conference. That was so not the case. I get there. We're Friday night. We've been on the road all day because we hit traffic driving to Vegas. Like we didn't have time to get in and like decompress and shower and stuff to get there for Friday night's portion. So it was like get to the hotel, quickly throw on business clothes, and then run back to the arena. So that was a thing and then of course he left me to go sit on the floor. I also found out on our way there on the road that we would not be sitting together because he was an Eagle and I obviously was not and was his downline. So I'd be sitting by myself in the arena with his other downline, my cross line, who I didn't know that well, while he sat on the floor with water service. And I was like, what kind of shit? I was so annoyed. So then, yeah, he dumps me off Friday night with with my cross line. And because we got in so late, we got really bad seats. We're like literally behind the speakers up in the second level. And it was freezing cold. I was tired. So I was like, this just sucks. Then we had to be up at the crack of dawn the next day to go get in the ridiculous line. And he was like, oh yeah, he had an Eagle night owl thing that night. So it already didn't end till like after midnight. Then he had to go do his thing. So I like basically got 2 hours of sleep that night and then woke up to find out that our motel shower thing was broken. So I didn't get to shower or refresh myself. So I have bloodshot eyes, no sleep, feeling not clean or refreshed. And I'm going to be around like 20,000 people and trying to introduce me left and right. And I was just irritable and cranky and stuff. And then, of course, no food because it's all junk food and not vegan friendly. And you have to sit there for like 6 hours before you get a break. And then repeat. Saturday night, there's a function that's like for everybody, and he wanted me to come meet our Sapphires, Bernard and Sharon, and everybody else. And I was like, no, I'm sitting in the car because we didn't leave the arena till like after midnight again. I'm like, I'm sitting in the car, I'm gonna sleep. Can we please go back to the hotel? Like, this is absurd. And we got in a fight, and he's like mad because I didn't want to come in and socialize and sit there and listen to more panel discussions and shit. That's how that went. Sunday was a little better because I actually did get some sleep Saturday night. We got to sleep in because we weren't going to the like church service thing. And then I was like, after that weekend, I was like, look, if this is how it's going to be, like this not sleeping thing, I don't think I can continue with it because that's just not healthy. Like, I need sleep. I have health conditions. I need to sleep. I'm not even receiving any of the information because I'm basically unconscious with my eyes open at this point. Like, people are falling asleep like left and right of me in their chairs. We're exhausted. I'm thinking, like, what if people have died on the road trying to drive home from this after being sleep deprived for 3 days in a row? Like, this is not safe for anybody. And then, like, I think sometime between that FED and the spring leadership, they announced on Kate that night owls would no longer be a thing. And I was like, okay, good, because that's crazy. But yeah, I was not thrilled with the way that first function went. But then, I mean, I started to warm and I got really into the business. Like, I busted my ass. I was like killing it in PV. I was asked to speak at board plans pretty early on because I would have like 5 or 6 prospects plugging in. Like I said, I got my dad registered and he left shortly after. But I was like, head down, we're gonna bust our asses and get this done and be a diamond couple like by the time we're ready to have kids. And I was running with him. Like, he was a golden child. He was the star child of that organization. Like, he was the fastest eagle. He was hosting board plans. You know, he was always speaking and stuff, and people were like obsessed and enamored with him. Like, a lot of our cross line like have talked about how they like saw him as a competition. They're like mad because they weren't achieving his level of success. So I know it was a hit to his ego, and we fell out of Eagle Qual and stayed out for a while. So it was interesting. I'm trying to think of like other things that just really, I had to like stuff down a lot of stuff to be okay with what I was doing, like the misogyny, the dress code and stuff like that. Like, every time they would teach on the cardinal rules, whenever they would be like, whatever Diamond was speaking, they'd be like, cardinal rule, whatever number it was, don't mess with anyone's spouse. And they're like, that goes into attire, ladies, keep those collars high and those hemlines low. And I'm like, why does that fall on the women to not mess with anyone's spouse? Like, keep your crusty, stinky, like gross husbands. Teach them how to be upstanding men, the ones that you're claiming they are to be. And if they can't keep their eyes and their hands to themselves, then that has nothing to do with what we're wearing. So that would piss me off and trigger me every time I'd have to hear it. And then I know we've talked about this before, but like Splash, how
Oh
we
yeah,
were,
splash.
yeah, like not being allowed to wear a 2-piece bathing suit as a grown-ass woman in America. I'm over the age of 18. I don't live with my parents anymore, and I'm not super religious, but I'm not allowed to wear a 2-piece bathing suit to a lake where we're running around outside all day because it's inappropriate. But the men, they can be all gross and out there and show off whatever body they have. So
Yeah.
it's just so double standard and just toxic. So that was something that was really frustrating for me too.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And oh yeah, I went to my fair share of the splash. And yeah, splash was a very challenging event because you are well, for me, it was hard for me because like I was convinced by the time I was done with Worldwide that my future spouse was going to look at every other woman out there and that I like that's how I took it. Like I already had some fucked up shit happen, but that was just in my head because of Worldwide. Like I want to say the most insecure during that period of time. And it's not fair that you could not be empowered as a woman to do whatever you want with your damn body. If you want to wear a 2-piece bathing suit, like fuck it. Like I think you had even said you're like, this is my prime. Like this is when you should be. But the fact that you're being told that you can't specifically because another man can or a man cannot control himself is so it's a gross message to push on to women. But also you have to imagine that there are a lot of young girls who are entering this business 18,
Mhm.
19, 20, 21. It's so sad to hear how this is impacting their self-image. I mean, they're just growing into themselves
Yep.
and they enter this business and then
Toxic.
their selves are just like pushed down. Like you cannot be you. You have to be what the crown's wife is. Or for us, it was you have to be what the club owner's wife looks like or like the Syrian guy's wife. It's frustrating because that creates so much insecurity and so many issues. And
Yep.
it's gross. But no, I think you bring up so many so many good points because not only is there a lot of misogyny, there's a huge lack of representation. And
Yes.
I think when we were talking about the lack of representation, you had actually talked about your connection with the couple from Jamaica. Are you able to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting dynamic. So because they were, I don't know how to describe them. It's the
There,
white guy and the Jamaican wife, and she's the powerhouse speaker, and she cartwheels across the stage, and you can't miss them.
yeah,
um,
oh yeah,
I was really obsessed with her because she's the only black woman, the only black diamond woman up there. There are no black couples. There's the one used to be army pilot who's married to
yeah, the
a
guy,
white,
the
yeah,
bald dude, yeah.
nice guy, married to a white used to be teacher. They're a nice couple. And then there's this couple, the Jamaican lady and white guy. But because he was helping to build the UK market, because there isn't worldwide group in that area, and my ex is British, they were able to like bypass the cross line of all that, and like we got direct Kate number and cell phone number of him, the husband, and he was like coaching my husband on getting the market built out there, and like he would be like, and I don't know if he would be his platinum, but he would help. Like he shows the plan for London all the time. So there was a time where like we were on a Zoom call with him, and he was like showing us this big ass like expensive penthouse where a lot of celebrities live in Miami, and like there's a car elevator, you drive into it and it takes it up to your floor, and it was just amazing. And then she's like in the background and in her bathrobe because her whole family is about to go to Disney, and her like mom was in town from Jamaica, and she's like, hi guys, in the background, and I'm just like peeing myself, like this can't be happening, because I was obsessed with them. But they were living in, I can't imagine how much that must have cost to live there. They had a infinity pool on their balcony that overlooked the shared pool for the building that was like, I'm pretty sure like right next to the beach too. But recently I heard that they sold that unit, that condo, and moved to Jamaica, where obviously it would be a lot more affordable to live because most of their business is in Jamaica anyway. So I don't know what the story is there, but it seems like everyone's kind of trying to do what they need to maintain their diamond ships.
Yeah, wow. I think the fact that you had a closer relationship with them is very unique. The way that I remember them is that he's from Portland, Oregon, and she's from Portland, Jamaica. Like I remember
Mhm.
hearing that on a number of occasions. For that to be the only person that you can look up to, like, looking back, does that ever just like impact you negatively where you're like, man, that kind of sucks?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. You're in an arena with like 15 to 20,000 people, and maybe a couple hundred of them are Black. And then if you ever talk about how no one in your upline is Black, and you barely even have people of color in your upline, and you have there's like 10, 12 people between us and Big Crown Guy and his wife. And of course, we don't even talk to them because they're so far out of our league. It's like, oh, well, if you want to be the Black upline, if you want to be that representation, then you go ahead and build it so you can get up there and you can tell the story, and then you can inspire the next person. And I'm like, if this thing is so fair and equal opportunity and whatever, and it's been around for so long, there's no excuse why out of 60 diamonds that not one Black couple is up there. Like even like a Black couple emerald or single Black emeralds, like you have to look high and low for them. So it's just BS about equal opportunity because they completely disregard the socioeconomic injustices and inequity that would impact someone being able to build this business. Like if you're already hustling, you've got 2 jobs and you're doing Lyft and Uber in every spare moment just to keep the roof over your head, you can't afford to run a ditto. You can't afford to go to these function tickets and then like berating and speaking negatively and condescending people that are struggling and literally can't make it to a function and acting like it's their fault and their self-image, and they're making excuses for themselves why they can't make it happen when they physically cannot. It's just so fucked up. Like that toxicity. Like we had team members in Jamaica, and I felt so bad for them, like thinking their dollar, I don't know the math, but it's pennies to our dollar. And we had a single mom with a daughter with sickle cell. So she was constantly in and out of the hospital, and she's single, and she's like, they're in debt. And in theory, the business would have been great to help change their life, but it was just another cost that she really couldn't afford. It was so difficult and I felt bad. But like we're sitting here having like coaching calls with her where I'm watching my ex like just try to coach her up to what she needed to do. But it's like you're nowhere near her position. Like stop it. Just stop the BS. So I hated that. I hated nagging and reprimanding and a micromanager to other adults. Like that was so not what I wanted to do. Have people go through a really hard week and then come on a call with us and like not want to be there because here we go. Let's talk about your PV. Why are having you run your PV? Like I hated that. That was shitty. Oh, other reasons why I was just getting fed up. It was never enough. The constant being pitted against your cross line for attention and like a constant race to hit the next pin or whatever. Like they try to say that you shouldn't be comparing yourself to anyone but who you were yesterday. Don't compare yourself to your cross line because they could be ahead today, but you could be ahead tomorrow and blah, 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 blah. But the way that you scatter shine and gold stars and stuff, like you're doing it so that we're always trying to bust our asses to be the next one in the spotlight because you get totally ignored when you're not being edified. Like when someone else is being edified, it's like you just didn't do enough to deserve it. It really fucks with your self-image. If you didn't have issues before with attention, you will after being in a worldwide group.
Yeah. And they rip it away so fast too. I remember you were
Yes.
telling me a story about a very challenging time that happened that you guys were basically told that what was that you guys weren't going to be the taproot anymore?
Yeah, we had earned being driven depth with like our leg for the longest, and like even though we had fallen out of qual, we were still busting our asses, the numbers, the PV and stuff. We were always honoring the partnership, and our Ruby Larry said that as long as we were doing the work, he would never back out of our leg because we're earning it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about the numbers and how many people you have in your team. If it was just you two, I'd still always drive depth with you because you have earned it. And I'm like, then this is a few weeks after my father-in-law died on Christmas. My ex had just gotten back in the country because he was in London for like 3 weeks. I went out at the last portion of that for the funeral and we came back together. This was also 2 days before my surgery for endometriosis that I have been dealing with for over a decade. And I'm, this is my first surgery, so I'm nervous. I'm trying to like go into a calm state of mind and just not be stressed out. So they scheduled this call with us. It's Amanda and Larry and Bernard and Sharon. They're like, yeah, we're just going to have this is like January, the last days of January. They're like, we're going to have a call with you just to like game plan for your business for the year. And we're like, okay, because that's not out of the norm. And then they get on the call and basically tell us that the other leg that has way more people in Amanda's business, they were just the thriving business at the time. They were like, yeah, so it just makes sense. They have, they're growing leg and they have some things that need to be worked on and they need more attention right now. So you haven't done anything wrong, but yeah, Larry's gonna back out and go ahead and drive up with them because they really need it right now. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, so you backed up on your word. Okay, cool, whatever, fine. Just throw another thing into the pot of shit that we're already dealing with. And they tried to get a response out of me, like after putting me completely on the spot. Oh, and the way they hyped up this call too, in like the days and weeks leading up, they're like, I can't wait. You're gonna love the news. It's gonna be so exciting. I'm like, what's going on? Well, just tell me. And they're like, no, I can't tell you. It's just gonna be really cool. You're gonna love it. You'll be so excited for it. Just to come. I was like, why hype it up like that? Like you're just so dishonest about everything. But there was never any like accountability taken to the fact, because I would have had respect for Larry if he had been like, look, I know I made these promises to you guys for years, and I really hate that I have had to back out of this. My upline advised me to do this, and it's not fair to you guys because you are earning it, but it just comes down to business and numbers. And, I'm sorry. I would have respected that. And I think our relationship, the trust would have continued to have existed, but he didn't take any accountability. When I had a tough conversation with him and told him how I felt about it, like several days later, he was like, well, look, that's just your abandonment issues. And that's something that's triggers and trauma you're going to have to work on. And I'm just like,
what?
Yeah.
The fuck? That, holy shit. Okay, that is all kinds of fucked up. One, you're thinking that this is good news. This is not good news. You're not going to be fired up about this. You had a very sad passing. I mean, that is very, very traumatic. And just even though it's, it's your significant other's father, that still impacts you. That's his trauma. That's your trauma. That's a fucking ton. And then you have one of the worst, in my opinion, diseases that a woman can have. My best friend has endometriosis, and I've watched the pure pain that she has gone through for years. And I truthfully do not understand that you're going in to have surgery for. And it's very evident that they're very much not taking any of these things seriously. And then he drops this shitty news on, or they drop the shitty news on you like this is the best thing you ever fucking heard. That
Yeah.
pisses me off.
Yeah.
And all of this too is like it's all deception after deception after deception, and kind of on the note of deception. So I don't even have to say allegedly anymore because I know that this shit happens because it is in a disclaimer on the Worldwide Dream Builder website, as well as in a disclaimer at the end of every fucking audio. Were you guys ever told that your upline platinums and above are getting paid on your memberships?
Yes, it was very downplayed. So I found this Facebook group that I found you in recently. I found this a couple years ago when I was just looking to see, because they were always like, don't trust any negativity online, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, well, I want to see what a prospect would see if they went to go search us. So I went on Facebook, looked for Worldwide and Amway, and I found the group. And I was looking through all the posts and the comments and the stuff. And I was like, okay. So I went to our Sapphires, Bernard and Sharon, and I was like, hey, look, I found this stuff. What is this? And they're like, thank you so much for trusting us and bring this to our attention. We know about this group. Troy and Elaine are trying to get it taken down. They know about it. It's a lot of just hater, bitter, ex-loser, blah, 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 quitters that are spending their time doing that when they could have built an eagle ship. And, we know about it. And they're like, thank you for not just quitting and like giving us a chance to like, share. And I was like, yeah. So I asked them questions, and one of them was about the money that you get paid as a platinum and above for speaking and for Kate and Premier membership. And they're like, yeah, so if you do get a little bit of payment per membership in your downline, but it's so not much. They played it like it was like a couple of cents or like $1 per like subscription. And they're like, yeah, it's really not that much. It's such a tiny percentage of our income. The majority of our income comes from our Amway business. And then I was like, all right, well, what about being like speaking? Like you get paid to speak? And they're like, no, if you go do like a rally or something like that, all of the money goes towards the venue. And if there's anything left over after the venue's been paid, then hopefully that there's enough to go towards like reimbursing your flight, because Worldwide doesn't pay for your flight. So maybe there's enough to go to towards your flight, but you're not profiting. It's just enough to cover travel. And I was like, oh, okay. So really downplayed that. Yeah.
That's insane. But what's interesting is now we know that yes, they do get paid. It's all out there. It's all disclaimed. But it's never talked about. And they either downplay it or they deny it. We've had plenty of people come on and say no, they denied it. Like I've asked and they denied it, and that's crazy to me. But additionally, the amount is still, I'm going to say alleged. But we've been told by a third party source that at that level they are getting paid like in the thousands to speak. And now finding out that they're speaking on other organizations as well. They're speaking at Brit Worldwide events. They're speaking at URA events, and probably the rest that I haven't heard those yet, but I believe that they probably do. In my opinion, they're definitely like, they seem, in my opinion, to be making more money from Worldwide than they are with Amway.
Why else would people that are struggling and can't keep up with the PV and the memberships be coached to get their function ticket over running their PV?
Yes, exactly. And they'll push it as, oh, but this is going to help build your business. It's like, and that's not how that works, but okay. No. You're right. And then you had sent me, I think, a screenshot or something from I think it was Worldwide's Instagram or the website or something. And it was like, there's no sign of Amway. And all the old audios that I'm re-listening to, nobody's talking about Amway. Like it's all 100% Worldwide focused with a quote business opportunity attached. Mm-hmm. And the PV amounts are also so skewed because you kind of were in to see that transition of you're buying your PV and the way that the customer volume is going in is different now. And then you said it was 60 or 70% that has to be verified customer volume now. Yeah. And the fact that I'm sure Amway put that as some sort of trying to crack down. But what was your experience with that? And what was the standard of excellence and how were they coaching people to do PV? So
when I started, 150 PV for a single was the minimum. Standard of excellence was 200 PV and gold standard was 300 PV. It was 200 PV for a couple as the minimum, and I believe 300 PV is the standard of excellence or something. Either way, we were supposed to hit 300 by the end of the month with sales or whatever. And it was a struggle because they're like, oh, just switch your point of purchase over and buy it from this store, buy it from your store. And it's like, okay, but I'm not spending $600 a month on anything. So it's not just switching where I spend money. You want me to come up with money out of thin air, pull it out of my ass just to buy stuff that I don't need right now. Luxury skincare was not a priority when I was broke as fuck and I was starting this business. It just wasn't. Okay, I could definitely do better than like the $5 skincare products I was buying, but like $40 for moisturizer? No, I was not in a position to be spending that plus function tickets.
So when it came to the verified customer volume, what did that transition look like, and what was your experience and how your upline was telling you how to do it?
It seemed like the diamonds were frustrated about it, but they was kind of like they have to do it, so everyone has to do it, and we're just all gonna like grin and bear it. It was like, we went from having to write receipts for 50 PV a month for customers to having 60% of our 2 to 300 PV be verified customer sales, which means you have to have a real cell phone or phone number attached to the account, which means you can't use your own phone number or whatever. But you could still make fake receipts. That was what most people did, because if you didn't have that 60% registered in your Amway account, then you wouldn't get your bonus, your full bonus, and then your upline, if most of their downline wasn't at the 60% or above, like as a group, as a collective, if you weren't at 60 PV verified customer sales, then you wouldn't, as a platinum, you wouldn't get your full check. So it was constant. It was like every training was about VCS, 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 60%. And of course, we're worldwide, so we're above and beyond. So 70 or 80%. Meanwhile, people were barely able to sell 50 PV of products once a month. So most of these 60% VCS receipts were fake fraud receipts that you just make because no one really cares if it's a real sale or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's again, this is crazy. Like, if this was just supposed to be some great business that was so ethical, this would not be happening behind fucking closed doors and they wouldn't be lying about it. It's so allegedly fraudulent. I'm only going to say allegedly because you're speaking on your personal opinions. I'm speaking on my personal opinions. I wasn't there, so I can't say it, but it's your opinion, your experience, and you can say it. Absolutely. But that's not okay. That further proves, in my opinion, that this is a cult. I heard in the documentary, if you guys haven't seen The Vow on HBO Max, please go watch it. Oh my God, it's wild. It's about Nexium and the takedown of Keith Raniere. One of the guys who was testifying against this guy, Keith Raniere, he said, nobody joins a cult. Nobody willingly says, hey, I'm going into that cult. We get brought into these things with the people who are showing us that they have the best of intentions, people that we're learning to trust, people that love bomb the hell out of us. So we didn't say, hey, I'm going to go join this cult. It wasn't until after I left that I realized it was a cult, at least an alleged cult, in my opinion.
I mean, I definitely thought there were certain things that were culty about it, but I was like, whatever, I can just ignore that. But yeah, the screaming and the phone flashlights in the audience, as if this was just an honored person standing on a stage. People crying because head of Worldwide's wife, because he's dead. She wouldn't even come. She hasn't been to the functions in years. I'm trying to think of my first function. She was there in person or not. She might not have been, but I haven't seen her in person since. And she sends in a pre-recorded video, and everyone's crying when she shows up on the screen. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. But yeah, you don't realize just how all-consuming it is when you walk in or when you're sitting there in that business meeting. You're just like, wow, these are dope people. They get it. They're on track to doing something much better with their lives than just working for the man forever, and they can help me get there. And they're way better than my negative friends who just bitch about society and the world all the time. But then you get in, once you start to realize how toxic it is, you're so far gone, and you no longer feel like you can survive on your own without it, because the rhetoric of everyone's a failure, everyone's complacent, everyone's stuck in the rat race, or they're the hamster on the wheel, that's what you're going back to if you were to quit. So you're scared, yeah. But you do so much better. I've done so much better for myself in the few months that I've been out and have been able to come up for air and breathe and realize who the fuck I am, because I lost sight of her, and that was intentional for them. You're easy to control and manipulate when you replace someone's thoughts and identity and purpose with your own bullshit. So yeah. And it's so consuming. It was just never enough. If you're criticized for not being core, and then if you make it core, then, the content of your core is not good enough. It's like if I would send to Kate, like sometimes I just didn't have anything to say. So I'd just be like, hey, Larry, I'm just sending my core Kate up for the day. Hope you're well. I'll send you a better update tomorrow. And he'd be like, you're an eagle. I expect better content from you. Like, that's just not enough. And I'm like, I'm literally just trying to build a habit, like you say, but I don't have anything to tell you right now, like nothing interesting. Or like if I was like, hey, grab 3 numbers while I was out today, booked to step 1. He's like, okay, that's not like, okay. I expect like more profound content from you as an eagle. And I'm like, and then you're competing because you're hearing your cross lines Kates get passed out for way less impressive shit than you've done that week. And you're wondering why they're ignoring you. And it's the attack on your self-image is so constant. It's, oh my God, it's sickening.
Yeah. You're not wrong. And it kind of goes back to the bite model. I always bring up the bite model for various and commentary purposes, but you guys, this is not wrong. If you have not yet looked up the bite model by Stephen Hassan, it's freedomofmind.com. And you guys, all of these things are the way that cults will use these tactics that are mind control tactics. And it's true. The information control is very, very strong with Worldwide because they tell you replace your music with audios, only listen to audios, or listen to your Kates, only eat your products. And then again, with the lack of food, you can't eat out of function because the food there is sure, yeah, it's fried, totally agreed, but you can't even bring in products because they don't allow you to. So you're sitting there from god awful early hours to god awful horrible late hours on nothing, not even water. Like your options are so limited to where by the time you're at the end of the function, like you have to thrive on that energy because that's all you fucking have. And you are desperate for something input wise because you're deficient in a lot of different things. And it's all cult tactics. All of this is cult tactics. Like you may even have upline who are like, that's not intentional. It's designed this way. It is by design. You can't tell me otherwise. That shit is curated. It just pisses me off that you even got to this point and where you say that you weren't hearing your voice, you were hearing your uplines. Like that is devastating. And have you gotten past that now that you're out of the business? Like what did it start to look like getting out? I know that you say like the way that you explain it just breaks my heart. This whole the fact that you feel discarded is horrible, but what did kind of the ending start to look like for you?
Yeah, so it was just feeling like so purposeless, overwhelmed. I was working 2 jobs. I have my health issues. I have Hashimoto's on top of endometriosis.
Wow.
So just like dealing with that low energy exhaustion, like, I'm out of commission for like a week each month because of like the anemia and the excruciating debilitating pain, which if I did manage to show up for a board plan as a virtual one during that time of the month, they would edify the hell out of me because look what she's doing. And like there was this one point where I was like fainting and I was laying on the bathroom floor and I asked my ex to call a paramedic and he didn't because we didn't have enough money. He was like, it's like $1,000. And I was like, well, that's exactly what we have in savings. So opted not to. And I just laid down and took a bunch of sleeping pills and waited it out. But then, because I was home, I just like crawled to the sofa later that night for the board plan that our sapphires were doing. And they of course edified me for sitting up and doing that. And my ex sent a Kate up about my wife has went through this and she's still plugging in. And it's like, yeah, it sounds good when you're the star of it, but it's so toxic, like the unhealthy tactics that they try to like push so that other people are inspired to push through stuff that they actually probably need to be resting or taking care of themselves or focusing on their family. That like the exhaustion from trying to balance all of that, just going through year after year of not getting forward, staying out of equal qual, being drained because I was so tired of meeting people and not being able to actually make friends with them because I was like, well, I could go introduce myself and start a conversation, but that's going to lead to either they give me their number, they don't answer when I call, or they answer the call and they make it into the process and then they drop out of the process, or they make it through the process and then they become a downline and then they eventually quit and I no longer have a friend in this person that I thought was really cool. So what's the point in even talking to them? Because I was so tired of just making empty connections. Like I really, there are a lot of people that I met when I was out prospecting that I would have loved to have been friends with and of course, because I was being a sleazy, like gross weirdo, and they found out what I was really after. Like most people, I didn't get further than like the initial conversation with. So I was being depleted. I wasn't working on creative stuff anymore because the business took up all of my time and money. I stopped pursuing my career in film because, the coaching on getting a better business building job, because you won't have a job at all soon. So don't worry about, hustling to get booked on stuff in your industry because it won't matter. So, lost that, like filling up my cup with creative expression, not having a social life outside of the business, but not really having a social life in the business because you're not allowed to really cross line or hang out with people outside of. Hearing my husband at the time, it just got embarrassing after 2 years of every time he would be in a meeting or call someone to drop the message or whatever, be like, yeah, because of this business, my wife's walking away from her job in the next couple of months. In the next 2 to 3 months, she will never have a job again. And when I was like his girlfriend and I was new at this the first year, I was like, wow, I can't believe this is really my life. Like, how lucky am I? And then you hear it, each Christmas goes by and you're like, nope, still working. And it was just like
Yeah.
cringe. Yeah, I hated it. So I just felt so depleted. Like everything, like my personal style had been shifted and changed. Like I didn't buy things that I liked because I was like, well, I need to buy business clothes, or, even if it's not business clothes, if I'm out and about and someone sees me in that, well, I look like the platinum wife that I'm supposed to look like. And, I told you about my thoughts. It was like every moment of the day, it was very hard to have like personal time or rest or just do activities that you enjoyed. You felt guilty for watching a TV show or going out for a drink. I really didn't do that for years because of this. During the pandemic, this started. Our Ruby, Larry, really pushed LinkedIn prospecting and taught that specific strategic templates to message people on LinkedIn. So it was like, well, if you're not getting outside, then you have no excuse to not be on LinkedIn. You could do that for 30 minutes a day and send this message to this many people. And it was, then you had to cross-reference with DreamStream to make sure that that person wasn't already in the business. And you just felt so gross, like with what you're sending people. Like I could have been using LinkedIn for myself to get myself a better salary, but I'm sitting here like spamming people, mostly getting ignored. And people are suspicious, rightly so, because you're coming across like a freaking weirdo. And I loved being told, being taught and trained that like if you feel uncomfortable, it's because you're getting out of your comfort zone. Keep going. It should feel weird. It's like, no, it's weird because it's not right. Like we're
Yeah.
gross.
It's not natural.
No.
Wow.
And I like
That's
talking to people.
crazy.
I like complimenting people, but I just hated being forced to do it. And like I was so turned off and grossed out by like hearing my husband like his like forced just plastic dialogue. Like whenever we go out, like he'd give these compliments that were just so ingenuine, like it would come across sarcastic. Like he'd be like, hey man, love the glasses, where'd you get them? And it'd be like the most simple, basic ass generic pair of glasses. And it's like they're looking at him like, are you making fun of me? Because that's
Yeah.
how it's like there's nothing unique or interesting about these things that you're trying to start a conversation with. You're forcing it, so it's coming across disingenuine. So
Yeah.
it all started to really build up. My mental health was suffering. I had like an identity crisis, and I went to my upline saying like, I need to take a step back. I'm not quitting. I just need to not do as much. I need more free time. I need rest. So these are the things that I can attend. I had like a list of meetings and functions and stuff that I was going to do. I was like, I'm still going to run my PV. I'm still going to go to major functions, but like I can't do all of this. I need to take a step back from my mental health. And this is what triggered a conversation where Sharon, while I was like being very vulnerable and asking for support for my mental health, from being overwhelmed and burnt out, she took it upon herself to change the subject, completely ignored what I said about me. This conversation was about me. It was not about our relationship. Asked my ex, so what do you think about this? How do you feel about this? And I'm like, oh, so I guess this is about him, not me. And she's like, oh, well, if it sounds like your values don't align, it doesn't sound like you want the same things in life anymore. Because if you're taking a step back from the business, then that clearly affects what you want to accomplish together. And I'm like, what? That's not, I didn't, what? She's like, honestly, people that quit, they don't normally come back. And I was like, but I didn't say I was quitting. So she's like, so how's your relationship doing? And I'm like, okay, well, we're working on stuff. We just started therapy, couples therapy again a month ago. we're working on stuff, it's challenging and stuff, and then she like blows up and she's like, I'm so sick, I am fed up of hearing about your relationship, and you guys just need to make a decision. Either you're gonna do it or you're not gonna do it. You need to figure it out, because I'm just fed up about hearing about. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I was so like floored. So then that triggered what happened with him. That planted the seed. That's all he had to hear to like start like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be together, and starts that whole thing. But what's funny is when I was so sick of my ex a year prior to this, I was tired. I caught him in a lie about another woman. I caught him in a lie. I was tired of being ignored and hurt and gaslit and stuff. And I was fed up. He was like not listening to the therapist we were with at the time and stuff. And I was like, no one had my back. So I was like, look, I shouldn't have done this, but I gave an ultimatum, and this was in front of them. I was like, I think this was in February. I was like, look, if by August, like things have not improved and not changed, I'm going to start looking for another place to live, because I can't do this for the rest of my life. And then I was berated for that. They were like, or she specifically was like, well, it doesn't sound like you have unconditional love. You're either out, you're in. It sounds like you have a back door, and like you shouldn't have expectations of your partner. You're going to either accept what he does, or if it's a deal breaker, then you need to leave, and blah, blah, blah. Never like, you stop treating her like this. That is so unacceptable and inappropriate. It was always, I was not doing enough, and I wasn't willing to tolerate enough. And I had to put my self-esteem on the floor. Like, I was advised to be a doormat and not a wife, because it was like I was shit on for putting up my boundaries the year previously. But then when he initiated separation, then it was like, well, maybe that's just for the best. And again, after that point, nobody checked on me. Didn't hear from her, didn't hear from her husband, didn't hear from Larry. The only person I heard from consistently was Amanda. And I've seen her because they moved closer to the area again. Yeah, she fucking destroyed my life, or participated in destroying my life, completely tossed out my mental health concerns and issues, and the friendship that she pretended to offer for so long was clearly not available.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so much. Like,
Yeah.
that is devastating. You're like, the person that you trusted was
Yep.
like, fuck you.
Yep. For no reason. I didn't even go to her complaining about my relationship. She took the conversation there.
Wow. I'm just in shock of all of these things that you had experienced. And it really sucks that all of this happened. And I am so sad that this happened. I'm happy to hear that you're out. And I am curious, like, how is it going now? I know that it's still pretty fresh, but and I know you said that you're doing a lot better, but have you been able to kind of be more yourself now? And what has your healing journey looked like so far?
Definitely. It's been a lot of therapy. It's been getting into my spirituality, meditation, manifestation, listening to singing bowls and sound bath videos, and listening to audiobooks and self-development. Like, self-development that comes from a source that's not in Worldwide Group. And just healing, talking to people really helps. Like, telling people what the fuck I've been through the last 4 years, because they really had no idea. And like, each time I tell a friend or a relative what happened, they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So, just working on getting my finances together, like having so much more money now than I did when I was in business. I'm like, wait, I don't need this group to be debt free. It's the snowball method works across the board. Like, I don't need y'all for that. Being able to travel, like I took my first vacation as an adult in June, like ever, because I had the time and I didn't have to ask someone else for permission, and I had the money, and I was just like, I'm going. I went to a city and explored it, and met my best friend there, and she was in town from her city, and we just had a good time. And I've taken little trips throughout the summer. I plan on traveling a lot more this year, and I love travel. So like, not being
Yeah.
able to do that, not even to see my family for like more than once a year, because it was never in the budget because functions, that's been fulfilling. I'm looking at getting a dog soon, because that's something else I couldn't do, because dogs are an
Yeah.
expense and take time.
Oh, yeah.
Interaction, making friendships. Like, it's so easy to make friends when you're not like coming with an ulterior motive, and you just get to hang out with people. I'm going out to bars and stuff, not like frequently, but just like, instead of shitting
Yeah.
on people for being your beer drinking friends, or you're out at the cookout or whatever, you could do that, or you could be reading a book and building your business. It's like, okay, well, people are enjoying their lives and not just like grinding till they die. So I'd like to be one of those
Right.
people that is present in my life and has good experiences and isn't like consumed by working towards the future all the time.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And yeah, that delayed gratification shit that they push is bullshit because waiting fucking 10 years almost to do anything with your life is I'm not
Well,
down for that. I mean, so no, that's good. So what are some last words? If you could leave the listeners with anything, what would it be?
would say like, I mean, I know you say, make your own decisions, but it's a massive red alert. Like, don't do this, please. If you get prospected by someone in a grocery store or on LinkedIn or wherever in the self-help section of Barnes and Noble, it's like, and they start asking you what you do for a living, and if you keep your options open, just run. It's just there's so many layers of toxicity and danger and shadiness with this group of people. Like, just don't get involved. I don't even know how deep it goes. Like we were talking about this earlier, like the corruption runs pretty deep, and there's only so much that we've found out ourselves just being in it and then learning and hearing from like other people and their stories. Take our advice and don't be like, oh, I'm gonna figure it out for myself. I'm gonna learn for myself. Like, don't, just save yourself from that pain. The financial
Yeah.
waste. Worldwide Group acts like they have the cure to cancer, and you're selfish for not spreading the cure around you to everyone that you run into. But Worldwide is literally a cancer. So like I have so much healing to do from the trauma that I have experienced from this group of people. So that's all I can say. And then
Yeah.
for people that have left and people that are contemplating leaving, like, you are not a failure. You won't be a quitter. You won't be a loser. If you're having a much healthier life, you're happy, you find joy, you have meaning and purpose in your life outside of this, and by no means are you a failure. Like, you're doing things right. You do not need this to achieve success in your life.
Yeah. And that's so good. And I'm so grateful that you were so vulnerable and came here and just spoke on so much. And it's a lot of pain points, but it's true. Everybody heed her warning because I'm telling you, like, yes, we can say, like, you're a grown adult. You can make your own decisions. If you still hear this and you want to join, like, fuck, I mean, maybe you belong there. I don't know. I can't speak to that,
Exactly.
but but no, I'm grateful and thank you again so much, Nandi. I really appreciate your willingness to come here and tell your story. If you guys want to be like Nandi and want to tell your story, please follow me on TikTok, DM me on Instagram. Both handles are exesandtea.podcast. I'm on YouTube and pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. Do you have any social medias that you would like to plug?
Really, the main one that I'm active on is Instagram. So I_am_Nandi. That's my page. And I might make a TikTok soon, but I don't have anything to plug right now.
Thanks so much, everybody, and we will catch you guys on the next episode.